Good morning. My name is Lorraine Zuwallack. I'm a registered nurse, and my nursing specialty certification was for hospice nursing. I worked as a home hospice nurse for a large home care agency for 10 years. Our program cared for hundreds of patients, and in that entire span of time, not one patient ever asked to hasten his or her death. The subject was never raised. Each patient was discussed at our weekly hospice team meetings, and had this been an issue, it would have come up. It never did. And the reason it never did was that we afforded our patients excellent end-of-life care. We addressed their spiritual, psychological, social, and especially symptom control issues. And we made it our mission to provide excellent pain control to optimize their quality of life. The hospice team also provided emotional support for the patient's family. Most of our patients were on narcotics for pain control, and they had in their possession enough narcotics to end their lives if they wished to do so. None ever tried. None. Of hundreds of patients with bottles and bottles of morphine in their possession. Taking an overdose is the opposite of death with dignity. Hospice care does afford death with dignity. It neither hastens nor hinders death and is the compassionate answer to end-of-life care. Suicide is not even remotely in the realm of medical care. In fact, the first principle of medical ethics learned by every medical student and nursing student is primum non nocere. First, do no harm. And what can cause more harm than suicide? I would also like to point out that the wording in Section 8, line 12B in this bill states, "This shall not constitute suicide." This is suicide. Sugarcoating language about compassionate death cannot change the fact that we are talking about suicide here. And the medical community should not be involved in providing that. Another reality is that patients who have been given a terminal prognosis sometimes stabilize and are able to return to good health and can be discharged from hospice and live several years longer. I have had more than a few cases like this. Suicide certainly removes that possibility forever. This bill has a provision stating that the petitioning patient be informed of the option for palliative care. How will that be explained? Who will explain it? Perhaps someone not familiar with palliative care. What if the patient does not understand what palliative care can do for him? If a person has a terminal illness and a 6-month prognosis, palliative care should not just be a suggestion, that should be the treatment plan for that person. A doctor who has such a patient and does not provide palliative care and yet would consider prescribing a lethal dose for that patient is failing that patient, period. Failure of the medical system. Finally, before I was a hospice nurse, I was an acute care nurse, and I worked in the intensive care units at St. Francis Hospital. And I cared for patients who had taken overdoses. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that an overdose is in no way dignified. It is not a dignified death. It's the furthest thing from a dignified death. Having cared for both overdose patients and hospice patients, I will say that there is no question in my mind that this legislation will do nothing to enhance end-of-life care in our state and instead will hinder it. We can do better than this for our dying citizens. Thank you.